We have here a 2004 Passat TDI 2-liter BHW engine, and the customer complaint is it runs terrible. When it pulled in, I thought for sure it was a bad camshaft, and we'll start it up for you and let you listen to it. But the more I listen to it, the more I don't think it's a bad cam. So let me start it up and let you hear it. Well, that's how it runs. So here is the auto scan. I'm only going to show the engine trouble codes, but we do have P0113 intake air temperature sensor, P1582 for altitude and boost pressure sensor, and P0238 manifold pressure boost pressure sensor, P0131 oxygen sensor, and P0101 mass airflow sensor. Doubt very seriously all these devices are failing and triggering trouble codes right now. In the back of my mind, anytime I see a mass airflow sensor code, I wonder if somebody's been underneath the hood trying to diagnose it. Seems like everybody's knee-jerk reaction is to unplug the mass airflow sensor, see if that corrects their problem. I've never once seen that as a diagnostic technique worth a darn. Please, people, stop doing that. Every vehicle that comes in here that has a problem has a mass airflow sensor code, and I've seen more people misdiagnose their mass airflow sensor on these cars and put one on it because they unplugged the mass airflow sensor, and whatever they read on the internet said that if they unplugged it, that'd tell them if it was bad or not. And everybody puts one on it anyway, and it's a misdiagnosis every time, so just don't do it. Anyway, since we have all these codes, I have to ignore all these codes. I just cleared them, and I'm not sure whether they're induced by the problem or causing the problem, or if the customer is underneath the hood unplugging as their diagnosis technique. So we'll do a real diagnosis here, see what it needs to fix it. Now, when this car first pulled in, I thought for sure, based on the way it was running, that it needed a camshaft. At one point, I was driving this car in the shop, the problem completely cleared up, and it ran fine for about 2 minutes, and then the problem came back. So to me, right off the bat, I'm going to say it's not a camshaft. I'm not going to do a camshaft inspection. I'm just going to look for a diagnosis elsewhere. Now, these do have a pump in the tank, a lift pump, so to speak, and let's see if we can hear it run. Not real sure. Let's do it again. Here's some relays clicking. Be pretty easy to fold that seat up and see if we could hear it run, but I'm just going to hook a pressure gauge to it and see. As you can see, somebody's been under the hood and replaced the fuel filter, which I'm okay with the knee-jerk reaction of replacing the fuel filter. Just don't get a knee-jerk reaction and start unplugging stuff. It just doesn't work as a diagnostic technique. This here is one of my favorite tricks for pulling hoses off. I like these needle nose with the bend in them. You squeeze the hose, release the clamp, and then you can just pull it right off by using this as a lever. So there's our fuel pressure gauge. 10 psi is just fine for this type of diesel. All it is a lift pump. It is not a pump to pressurize the fuel into the cylinder or anything like that. So 10 psi is fine. I've seen them run with even less. Just make sure it never goes into vacuum. If it goes into vacuum, that indicates a restricted fuel filter. A little bit of damage on the old serpentine belt there. Okay, we've got the engine running. As you can probably hear, it's shaking and stumbling. Obviously this is a misfire. Misfire with a diesel doesn't mean there's no spark. I've had people comment that several times. It means there's no combustion. And no combustion can happen for many different reasons, one of which being no fuel, another of which being no compression, and a third one would be no oxygen. And that's where I'm going with this one. Of course, there's a bunch of other things that can cause a misfire on a diesel. On this model, of course, it can be the connection to the injectors themselves, the wiring to the injectors. But we want to check the EGR system, because if the EGR system sticks open, it'll be letting exhaust in all the time, and there might not be enough air in that exhaust for the engine to fire. So we're going to go to output tests and run the EGR function, and luckily it's the first one. And what you're going to see here is that it'll give it some duty cycle that turns the EGR valve on and should open it, and you should see an equivalent response here on the mass airflow sensor. So it's off right now. Now it's on. You should see a response, but basically it's not changing. It's changing, but it's not changing much. That 5 to 15 that it's changing is nothing compared to the 1100. So on a percentage basis, it's hardly changing even 1%. And it should be changing a significant amount with this 30% here. It's commanding it on, and we're not seeing a corresponding change in airflow. So that means the EGR valve is either stuck open all the time or stuck closed. So based on the way it's running, I would guess that it was stuck open. So here's my plan of action. I'm going to block off this right here to where EGR can't flow in there and see if it runs better. That's just as a temporary test to see if the problem goes away. EGR test block off plate. Just loose these up a bit here. And just need enough room to slide that in. Tighten her back up. If you work on these things regularly, you should build you one of those test plates. And let's see how it runs. No stumbling, no shaking. No misfiring. I think that's pretty clear evidence that the EGR valve is stuck open. Along with the output test that showed no change in the mass airflow sensor reading when this EGR valve was commanded open. That's pretty conclusive that it was stuck. Now some of you might say, why ain't it triggering an EGR trouble code? Well, maybe it was and he cleared it, I don't know. But I do know from experience, these things stick. They cause problems like this and worse. And sometimes they don't trigger codes. You would think that they would, because as you can see, there's 5 wires in there. So not only is there 2 wires to power this electric motor, but there's 3 wires for a position sensor in there. You would think that the computer would see that the EGR valve itself isn't moving, because there is a sensor there to sense its movement. Don't know why they don't trigger codes, but this is the 3rd one I've had that had drivability problems from a stuck EGR valve that did not trigger trouble codes. I turned the motor off so I wouldn't have to shout over the sound of the motor. With regards to options to fix it, we can certainly take this apart, clean it, see if we can get it working again. Replacing this is an expensive part. I think it's $290 for original equipment part. Honestly, I don't know if there's an aftermarket one available. So it's an expensive part just all around. Of course, a delete might be an option. Not hard to do on this one. We'll talk it over with the customer, get a approval for a method of fix, and we'll move forward from there. Well, golly, there's your problem, lady. Some pretty significant chunks of carbon fell down in the intake manifold when I removed that. I'm going to get a vacuum and suck those out. What a mess. Well, there's how much carbon I got out of her. And there's the EGR valve with my initial cleaning. I might clean it up some more, but I'm going to put it on the car and run the output test and see if this thing will open up and close. If it don't, I don't need to waste any more time cleaning it. EGR test. Activate. Just want to make sure it does work when the car's off, and it is working. Seems to be working. I wonder if that valve is sealing good enough. Might take it apart a little bit further and see if I can clean the surface of that valve. So obviously the motor opens the EGR valve that way, and the spring helps return it, but motor's got to turn it back to close it. So with that open now, I can get inside there and clean it a little bit better. Output test, activate! Okay, I can still see light through there. That thing is not closing all the way. That's probably the entirety of our problem. I might work on this a little bit more, see if I can get that to move, but that needs to close all the way. Maybe if it was exercised a bit more, it might close all the way. Well, that time seems a little better, but I can still see a little light through there. I might take this apart again, open it up, see if I can get it to seal. I'll probably go ahead and try it, see if it fixes the problem, just so I can know. But this thing probably needs an EGR valve. Okay, last try here. Just going to leave the camera on the valve while I go turn on the output tests. Activate. Yeah, I can still see light through there. I'll bolt it up and see how it works, but I would guess we're going to need to replace the EGR valve on this. Output tests continue going even though I unplugged it. Yep, got it cleaned and installed. See how it works. Get out of the output test and clear the codes because I know I triggered some codes there. And start it up and see how it runs. I guess we're going to start it up and see how it runs. I need to take that plate out of there. Let's see how it runs.